Today, we're going to talk about the new home inspection law that went into effect October 15th in the state of Massachusetts. And we're going to talk about why overall it is a good thing. There are definitely some cons when it comes to this law. So, whether you are a buyer or a seller, this is going to affect you in the future. So, stick around. October 15th marked the beginning of a new law that went into effect in Massachusetts regarding home inspections. And that law basically says that a seller can no longer accept an offer from a buyer where the buyer waives the home inspection. And that includes whether there are agents involved or whether this is a for sale by owner. There are a few exceptions to this rule. If a seller is selling to a close family member, and that includes a divorce where one spouse is buying out the other spouse, this home inspection rule does not apply. If the home is at auction, foreclosure, this rule does not apply. If the home is a new construction and offers a 1-year home warranty, this new rule doesn't apply. And if it is part of an estate sale, this rule doesn't apply, or law, I should say. So if you're just a regular Joe Schmo, you see a house that you like, you want to put an offer on it, and you see that there are other people wanting to put an offer on this house as well, in the past, you were able to submit an offer and you waive the inspection. That is no longer a possibility anymore. And I just want to share with you some of the wording of how this law is written. No seller of a residential structure or residential condominium unit or agent thereof shall condition the acceptance of an offer to purchase on the prospective purchaser's agreement to waive, limit, restrict, or otherwise forego the prospective purchaser's right to have the structure or unit inspected. So this doesn't necessarily mean that the home buyer has to have an inspection. All this law is saying that the home buyer, or the home seller rather, has to allow the home buyer 10 days or a reasonable amount of time to conduct a home inspection if that buyer so chooses. The law goes on to state, no seller shall accept an offer to purchase from one prospective purchaser or agent thereof in advance of the seller's acceptance of the offer. Informs the seller either directly or indirectly that the prospective purchaser intends to waive in whole or in part the prospective purchaser's right to inspection. So if on paper there is no language that says the buyer is going to waive an inspection, but the agent who represents that buyer calls the agent for the seller and says, hey, listen, my buyer intends to waive the inspection. I just want you to know that. Can't do that. And the seller also has to give the buyer a reasonable amount of time, like I just said. So if the seller says, I'm happy to accept your offer, but you have to do an inspection in the next 30 minutes, or I'm not going to accept your offer, that is not considered a reasonable amount of time. And that is not allowed under this new law as well. So you can't really get around this law by making a phone call or putting an unrealistic amount of time for the inspection to happen. So let's read what happens if you choose to ignore the law and you get caught. Any seller who fails to comply with the provisions of this section shall be liable to the prospective purchaser for all damages caused by the failure to comply and shall be subject to assessment of a civil penalty not to exceed 4% of the sale price of the residential structure or residential condominium unit as recorded with the Registry of Deeds, or $10,000, whichever is greater. Now, in the greater Boston Metro West area, where the average sale price is upwards of $1 million, 4% is a lot of money. And the law specifically says 4% or $10,000, whichever is greater. So if you're selling a home for $1 million and you decide to ignore this law, you get caught, you're going to have to pay upwards of $40,000 fine for ignoring this law. So this law is no joke, and it's not meant to be ignored. Now, the pros of this law is that it levels the playing field. If you're someone who doesn't want to take the risk, and I'll be honest with you, no one should take the risk of foregoing an inspection of a home unless there are very specific circumstances. For instance, you plan on tearing the home down. something like that. But otherwise, if you're just, buying a home from someone, you know nothing about that home, I don't ever recommend foregoing an inspection. And just a reminder, an inspection is not to find things that are wrong with the house. An inspection is a fact finding mission, so to speak. It's to learn about the house. It's to find out where the shutoff valve is. It's to assess the age of the mechanicals in the house and when you may have to upgrade or get the mechanicals serviced. It's to learn about the house, not necessarily to find everything that's wrong with the house. You can get an extra 10 grand off the house or you can walk away. It's primarily made for you to learn and understand your house. This also adds another layer of transparency between seller and buyer. If a seller knows that there is potential, almost 100% potential, that a buyer is going to do an inspection, a seller may be more forthcoming with what is wrong with the house because that seller knows that it's going to come up in the inspection if the buyer chooses to do an inspection. So a seller may be more likely to say, look, I'm just going to tell you right off the bat, the roof has a little leak in it because I know you're going to find it in the inspection. So there's a layer of transparency that is going to come about with this new law, which is a good thing. Just a quick timeout to remind you that if you're getting value out of this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up. And if you're interested in learning about the real estate market in Massachusetts, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that little bell so you get notified whenever a new video drops. All right, let's get back to it. Now, the bad things. With every law, there are good and bad consequences to them, but no law is perfect, and this including this one here. So the first sort of imperfection that jumps up at me is the fact that brand new construction that offers 1-year home warranties are exempt from this. A seller can accept a buyer's offer where the buyer waives the inspection if it is new construction and if the seller is offering a one year home warranty. Now, warranties don't cover everything, and I hate to say it, but all new construction homes are not built the same. Not every builder is reputable. Not every builder is good. A home inspection, even though it's a fact-finding mission, if you come across a hazard or something that's supposed to work that doesn't work, then you have every right to go back to the seller and ask the seller to make those fixes. Now, that's not to say that you can't do that with this law. But what I am saying is if there are several people that are vying for this one home, you are allowed to put in your offer, I am going to forego an inspection, to sort of give yourself the leg up on someone else who may include an inspection in their offer. And the cleaner the offer, meaning the fewer contingencies that you put in an offer, the better it is for the seller. And it just makes it easier on the seller. And all sellers want is an easy sale. The other con is that buyers now have one less strategic tool in their pocket when it comes to putting in an offer. Now, there's nothing that prohibits a buyer from getting an inspection done prior to submitting an offer. When the market is crazy and there are lots of people that are interested in one home, it's actually very smart, if the seller allows it, to go in prior to putting in an offer, getting an inspection done, and then when you submit the offer, you don't have to include an inspection because you've already done it. So you can forego the inspection. This new law no longer allows you to do that. So as a buyer, you have one less strategy to get a leg up on the other people when there are multiple offers coming in. And the other con is that it can slow the market down a bit, which isn't always bad, but hear me out. If my buyer puts an offer on a home, it gets accepted, and now you have to give, that 10-day window to get an inspection. Something comes up in the inspection, the buyer decides to back out, and now as a seller, you have to put the home back on the market. You could potentially be 14 days from when an offer gets accepted to having the inspection, negotiating, it falling apart, and getting back on the market. Timing is really crucial when putting a home on the market, and 14 days could really be the determining factor between getting multiple people interested in a home and then having that excitement kind of fizzle out. So, overall, this new law adds another level of protection, another level of transparency between buyer and seller. And overall, it is a good thing. It's just going to take some time for buyers and sellers to adapt to this new change. So, if you have questions, whether you're a seller or a buyer about this new law, reach out to me. I'm always happy to chat. And if you want to talk real estate strategy, interested in putting your home on the market, it's never too early to start the conversation. And it's never too early to start prepping your home for sale or prepping your pocketbook for buying. My name is Sara Dalicandro. I work in the greater Boston Metro West area. My contact info will be on the screen somewhere. Thanks so much for sticking around. If you found value from this video, I would really love a thumbs up. And if you're interested in learning about the real estate market, what's going on in Massachusetts, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that little bell so you get notified whenever a new video drops. Thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll see you again.